With the European farewell canceled, I had the time I felt was essential for me to help support Evan through the traumatic upheaval that lay ahead of him. After having it looming in front of me for a year, the time had finally come for me and Pam to divorce. The way I see it, we shared equally in all that happened. We chose each other, and from the very start we rarely met the other's needs or expectations. We chose poorly. Pam was a beautiful woman who was emotionally unavailable to me, which was a familiar dynamic. I was once again drawn to a challenge, seeking validation where it wasn't going to be given no matter what I did or didn't do. As for Pam, I know she felt minimized by my fame and success, although I'm sure it hoped it would have the opposite effect on her. It was all futile and pointless. That was the lesson learned. We had been brought together to create and bring an extraordinary child into the world and then parent him without compromising him in our divorce or separate lives. We accomplished that admirably, and I will always be grateful to Pam for her commitment in making that our priority. Still, I had no idea how painful it would be. Pam and I sat at the dining room table with Evan, who was 6, and explained that Mommy and Daddy weren't going to be together anymore. We're still going to be your Mommy and Daddy, and we still love you and will always be there, but we won't be living together. He burst into tears. I told him that yes, it was horrible, and that yes, Daddy cried too. I never tried to minimize what he was going through. I tried to acknowledge the pain and share it. Strangely, during our separations, Pam and I had been building a house. I'd found a spectacular piece of property in Beverly Hills with unobstructed views of the ocean. By the time all the red tape had been taken care of, plans had been drawn up and approved by the city, bids for the construction decided on, and actual ground broken, our marriage was descending into crisis. But the work was in full swing by that point and was best left to continue. At the time of our divorce, the house looked complete on the outside, but was just a shell, as incomplete as our relationship. As Pam and I began the divorce process, it knocked me off my feet to find that the person I'd seen as my partner now saw me as her enemy. I had faith in Pam because of what she had told me years ago about not wanting anything if things didn't work out between us. And since in my mind this wasn't going to turn into a typical Hollywood scenario, I hired a very civil and reasonable lawyer. But then I found myself in a conference room in a mediation office, facing her and her attorneys and her forensic accountant advisor, feeling like I was having surgery performed on me without anesthesia. Finally, I said, "There must be a misunderstanding here because Pam would never go along with what you're proposing." Pam looked at me and said, "I know exactly what they're saying. This is business." My jaw dropped. My mind raced back to the unsigned prenuptial agreement and Pam's declaration that where she was from, your word was your bond. Apparently now she was from Beverly Hills, a place where words and bonds were quickly forgotten. Evan was never an issue. He was my son 100%, and I would pay all his costs and expenses through adulthood without hesitation. Additionally, I had offered Pam a $2 million house and told her that I would pay her expenses for 5 years and fund any classes she might want to take to prepare for the future. I didn't expect her not to want anything, of course, but I was shocked when the mediator asked her what she wanted, and she said, "I want the same as he has." What? I had gambled my future because of this dream that I believed in, and she wanted the same as I had? How could she rationalize something like that? An astute attorney later told me, "I've never met a woman who thought she got too much." But the law was on her side. To be in a room and have no control over my destiny was a situation I had never been in. I just had to sit there as people sliced pieces off of me. At some stage, my lawyer said, "You might have to sell the house." "Absolutely no way," I said. About that one point, I was adamant. The house meant more to me than its monetary value. It was the culmination of all my decades of hard work and my surgically repaired body. In addition to the shoulder work, my knees and hip were wrecked. It represented the freedom I had worked my entire life for. "I'll do whatever I have to," I said. "That house is mine." I ended up buying Pam a 6,800 square foot house sight unseen that she chose in a gated community. It was important to me to have Evan nearby to make it easier for him to go back and forth between us. I almost felt guilty about the house that she said was just okay until I actually saw it. The place had a tennis court and a pool and was beautiful. When it was all settled and I was home one night, alone, without Evan, I collapsed to the floor in my empty house. I was devastated. There was a voice to the pain that came from deep inside, a guttural sound from someplace that you never reach at other times. It happened several times. I would just buckle over and sob, and the sound would come out. I felt a sense of failure even though I knew, at least in retrospect, that the marriage had been doomed from the start. We had failed to see that marriage should be the confirmation of a great relationship as opposed to a way to fix the problems of a relationship that wasn't great to begin with. It should never have happened, though I wouldn't trade a minute of it because Evan became a part of my life through the relationship. I thought back to my own childhood and something my mom used to say. Nothing bad ever happens. I hated hearing that back then, but now I understood what she really meant. Everything leads to something else. Evan was a gift from God, and having him come into my life was worth whatever it now cost me in pain or dollars. In fact, the thing that hurt the most was the fear that I had betrayed my son. I had vowed never to hurt him, yet I couldn't protect him from this. The most horrific realization was that I wasn't going to be able to see him every day, that I couldn't be with him whenever I wanted, or whenever he wanted. In the wake of my divorce, people in the same situation told me that I needed to go out and start dating. You need to have a life too. No, I don't. I saw other people go that route based on one rationale or another, but at the end of the day, I saw it as selfish. It didn't take into account what was best for their children. My child was going through incredible trauma, and my only concern was to make him feel safe. Bringing other people into the equation because I wanted to have company or get laid would be insane. How selfish could you get? The only thing that mattered at that point was Evan. My decisions would have a huge impact on him. I wanted to spend all my time with him, talk with him about whatever was on his mind. I bought a book called When Children Grieve that helped explain how children process and deal with grief and loss. I studied it. One afternoon, I was sitting outside my house thinking about all of this when one of the guys who had worked on the house came by unexpectedly to fix something. I didn't know him beyond a nod of hello here or there, but he must have known what had happened and seen how distraught I looked because he came up to me. I hope you don't think I'm overstepping my bounds, he said, but I can see what you're going through. I know you're going to think that I'm crazy and that this won't be true for you, but I got divorced and it felt like the world had ended. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just want you to know that I'm happily married now to the most amazing woman and have the most fantastic life now, and you will too. Just as he predicted, the first thought that went through my head was, you're crazy. I had no band, I was divorced, I had betrayed my kid. What the fuck am I going to do now?